Imagine walking into a museum, looking at a beautifully preserved bird, and then realizing that by the time scientists even figured out it was in danger, well, it was already a ghost.
Right, just completely gone.
Exactly. Welcome to today's deep dive. Today we're actually pulling from late 19th century scientific investigations by ornithologist William Dutcher, along with some modern Wikipedia records. We are tracking the really mysterious and honestly tragic history of the Labrador duck.
Yeah, and this bird holds a pretty grim title. It's the very first known endemic North American bird, meaning, a species found absolutely nowhere else on Earth to go extinct after the Columbian Exchange.
And just as a quick reminder for you listening, that exchange was the massive swap of plants and animals in human populations right after 1492.
Exactly. But before we dig into how a species can just, well, vanish,
Yeah.
you really have to picture what we actually lost here.
Yeah, paint a picture for us. What did it look like?
So this was a sea duck, and it was closely related to Steller's eider, which is another rare, highly specialized seabird. People back then called the Labrador duck the pied duck, or sometimes the skunk duck.
Skunk duck because of the colors.
Right, the males had this incredibly striking black and white plumage. But the truly wild thing about this bird is that it was an absolute phantom, even to the absolute giants of early ornithology.
Yeah, I mean, John James Audubon traveled all the way to Labrador and never actually saw one in the wild.
Not even one.
And Alexander Wilson, another huge foundational naturalist, noted how incredibly rare they were on the coast, even in his time. It's sort of like nature produced a highly specialized, rare prototype of a vintage car, right?
Oh, that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, and then before we could even study the manual, the factory just burned down.
That is spot on. And because they were so elusive, even to guys like Audubon, figuring out exactly when that factory officially closed, when the last bird actually died, that became a major scientific headache.
I can imagine. How do you even declare a ghost officially dead? Tracking an extinction timeline when the bird is already almost impossible to find has to be like a historical nightmare.
It really was. It actually triggered a rather heated debate among 19th century scientists. You had this prominent British professor, Alfred Newton, and he confidently declared the book was closed in 1852,
Based on what?
based on a bird killed in Halifax Harbor. He thought that was the definitive end of it. But then American researcher William Dutcher stepped in, essentially playing historical detective.
Oh, I love a good historical detective story. What did he find?
Well, Dutcher tracked down a preserved specimen of a juvenile male that was shot on Long Island much later. This was in the fall of 1875.
Wow, so decades later.
Yeah, and modern records even pinpoint a final sighting in December 1878, way inland in Elmira, New York.
Wait, hold on. If Dutcher proved a juvenile was shot in 1875, that means its parents had to be alive somewhere, right?
You would think so, yes?
Like, plundering the occasional rare bird is one thing, but how could an entire breeding population just disappear completely unnoticed?
The answer to that actually lies in the mechanics of their geography. See, the Labrador duck was a strong, swift flyer.
So it wasn't just some clumsy bird getting easily picked off.
No, not at all. But unlike other sea ducks that migrated to deep, frozen, really inaccessible parts of the high Arctic to breed, the Labrador duck relied on rocky coastal islets much further south.
Ah, so they didn't have that extreme northern sanctuary. They were essentially the low-hanging fruit for the expanding East Coast.
Exactly. That geographic vulnerability doomed them. Between roughly 1840 and 1860, major cities experienced a booming market demand for waterfowl.
Right, people needed to eat.
Right, and this fueled a really lucrative industry of professional gunners. They were armed with better boats and were navigating these expanding trade routes.
So they could just sail right up to where the ducks were.
They sailed up the coast and easily accessed those rocky nesting islets. And they didn't just shoot the adult birds for the meat market, they relentlessly gathered the eggs too.
Wait, plundering nests, that's not just hunting. That's destroying the species' ability to replenish itself at all. It's a total ecological death spiral.
It absolutely is, and it happened fast. By the 1890s, when scientific expeditions finally went searching for them in places like Labrador and Greenland, the coastal islands were just empty.
That is so sad.
Gets worse. When researchers showed pictures of the duck to local native hunters, the hunters didn't even recognize the bird. They had no memory of it. Today, only 55 stuffed specimens exist in museums worldwide.
Just 55. It really slipped right through the cracks of history, going from a rare marvel of nature to a museum artifact in just a few decades.
It really did.
We know exactly how many of those stuffed specimens exist today, 55, yet we still know absolutely nothing about their exact distribution or breeding habits.
Nothing at all. We were too late.
Which leaves you with a really haunting question to chew on. If a bird as visually striking as the skunk duck could vanish right under the noses of the greatest naturalists in history, what inconspicuous, unspectacular insects, fungi, or plants are we wiping out today without even realizing they exist? Imagine